Hi, welcome back. I'm Chase, your host, and this is the AutoGuide YouTube channel where we bring you reviews of all of the latest cars like this, the 2024 GMC Canyon AT4X AEV edition. It's a mouthful of a name, but today you're going to find out everything there is to know about this. So I figure the best place to start is with what this is supposed to do. I mean, you can kind of guess from the look of things, can't you? I mean, I can. There's big tires, a lot of ground clearance, there's these nice low clearance bumpers for better approach and departure angles, there's a monstrous tire in the back that you may not be able to see, but that I can always see because it's massive. So, well, it's obviously to off-road, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to off-road a little bit. We're going to find out whether this is a good off-roader and whether it stacks up to its competition. Now, I'm in the very lucky position to have driven all of its competitors. That means the Toyota Tacoma, the Ford Raptor, or I'm sorry, the Ford Ranger. The Ford Ranger Raptor is the one that best stacks up. The Chevy Colorado, which is sort of a budget alternative, and then of course there's this, the GMC Canyon. So today, sit back, relax, and watch us find out whether this is going to be a solid off-roader that's going to get you where you need to go, do it well for the money, and most importantly, justify the extra expense over the Chevy Colorado ZR2. That's the top trim Colorado. And the slightly less expensive alternative to this with the same motor, the same general styling, the same interior, etc., etc. I would also like to take a quick minute to go over what the AEV edition part of this very long name is all about. Let's start with the easy stuff. There's the 17-inch wheels surrounded in 35-inch Goodyear all-terrain MT tires. There's also these AEV edition bumpers. There's some skid plates back there as well. There's the giant wheel that I keep harping about that completely eliminates any rear view visibility. And there are also some stronger skid plates and some rock sliders. But the big news is the extra ground clearance. This is an extra inch and change, which nets you 12.2 inches. That's right, a foot and change of ground clearance. So with that in mind, let's get through the rest of what this is and what it does. You guys are going to have to get used to me tripping like that. Despite being born here, I'm not so sure-footed off-road. Unlike this, let's talk about how much this costs. The AEV edition obviously adds quite a lot to the price. We talked about what's in that and what you get for it. Really, the lift is the biggest deal, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Let's start with the starting price, which is $54,300 MSRP, largely on par with other trucks in this segment, but this has a whopping $12,000 worth of options on here. The AEV edition package will run you $10,100, which is a lot of money. There's other really expensive options on here. It's $1,000 for a sunroof for some reason, and that's with a manual shade. It's just a ridiculous amount of money for a sunroof. What is worth it though is the $500 underbody cameras. That way you don't really need a spotter. I've been up here by myself all morning and haven't needed a spotter, which is kind of nice. There's also some other odds and ends that cost money. It's $40 for this little license plate bracket that says AEV on it. You probably skip that and save yourself 40 bucks. Go get it. I don't know. Go get a burger instead. Burgers are like $40 now. There's also this $495 sterling metallic paint. You should save yourself $495 or spend it on a better color. And lastly, that brings the total to $68,030. Now let's talk about the powertrain for this, which is shared with the Chevy Colorado, and also what that means for the competition. So let's talk, that's kind of warm. So let's talk powertrain. This is the exact same engine that you get in the much cheaper Chevy Colorado. Thankfully, the engine doesn't really feel it, which we'll talk about a little bit more in our driving impressions. For now, what you need to know is that this is a 2.7-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. It makes 310 horsepower and 430 pounds-feet of torque. So it's a little bit of a torque monster. It's also paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission, driving, in this case, all 4 wheels. Lower versions of the Canyon do start with rear-wheel drive. Obviously, it's a truck.
get four-wheel drive, take the hit in miles per gallon. Speaking of, I am getting 16.8 miles per gallon right now, which feels really, really, really high. Yes, this does have cylinder deactivation, which is kind of cool to drive around a turbocharged two-cylinder truck. Not that you'll ever notice when the cylinders are turned off, but I think that that fuel economy figure is artificially high. And the reason I say that is because I have spent pretty much all of my time in this truck driving it on the highway. Drove it an hour and 45 minutes on the highway to get up here, drove it around town, almost exclusively highway, took it to the grocery store once and did some off-roading. So I think that realistically, you're probably going to end up around 14 miles per gallon in this. And that's it. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the money and a little bit more about the competition, shall we? If you just want the bare bones AT4X AEV edition, it is of course slightly cheaper. To do that, you will be paying $64,400, which is kind of right for the segment and kind of a little pricey. Let's talk a little bit more about that. The Toyota Tacoma Trailhunter, for example, its MSRP is $64,895. Now that's Toyota's most off-roady, overlanding focused Tacoma with all of the locking differentials and all of the tires and all of the skid plates. There's also the Ford Ranger Raptor, which is Ford's new mid-size Raptor that uses that big V6. That's the big, fast, Baja-oriented one if you want to go off-road and do it really, really, really quickly, or you want to play rally driver, that's the one that you get. And Ford will charge you $57,215 for the Pleasure, which obviously is just a little bit less than what you'll be paying for one of these. We'll kind of pro-con that out a little bit more in the driving impressions segment. And lastly, there's the Chevy Colorado Bison, this truck's corporate twin. The Bison edition is basically the AEV edition. It's kind of the same deal. So you get the lift, the tires, the unique wheels, the badging, the bumpers, the skid plates, the works, right? And that is a little bit cheaper. That's $60,540. So there you have it. That is the competition. That is where the money is at, and that's kind of what each of them is supposed to do. So let's hold a candle to this thing and find out what's going on with it. So normally what we would do next is we would go and we'd talk about all of the exterior features and what this car looks like and the design, but I would rather spend the time on the bed because I think that that's a little bit more important, and I think that all of you are intelligent enough to form your own opinions about how this looks. So with that in mind, let's talk about the bed. There's no power tailgate, as you may have noticed. I have to use my muscles. And inside, there's a couple of things that are worth pointing out. You'll have to forgive the detritus of shooting a video. There's just things scattered all over the place. Let's start first with this little, I guess it's a cooler. You can maybe keep a couple beers in there for tailgating, or it looks like you can mount something in there. There's a 1/4-inch adapter in there. It's nice. It's a little bit of added storage that's a little bit more secure. Someone who's trying to rob you blind might not think to look for it. So I don't know, keep your engagement ring in there or something if you're gonna propose. I don't know what you'd use it for. Not illegal substances. But anyways, this is a 5-foot bed. If you hadn't guessed, I would show you how it stacks up against me, a 5-foot short king, for comparison, but instead I'll just point out some of the other features. There's big wheel, right? We've talked at length about big wheel. There's also this spray-in bed liner, which is very nice. And of course, there's some cool little trimmy accents on the edge here. And there's a ruler. I have no idea how to scale these things are. Ford usually puts some sort of disclosure in there that says like, hey, this isn't quite to scale, blah, 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 blah. Maybe this one's accurate, but if you're like building a house, just use a real ruler. And that's really just about it. My biggest complaint with the bed is big wheel. It eats up quite a lot of bed space, as you can see. The rack that is in there also takes up a ton of space. It's bolted to the floor of the bed, which means that even if you take the wheel out to accommodate some larger cargo, you still have to take the rack out. So it's kind of a, you carry the wheel or you have the entire bed space, and you're gonna have to choose. I am going to start my review of the interior space with the fact that I don't want to muddy that up. Let's start it with a complaint. There's no sliders. Well, there's rock sliders. Sorry, there's no step up into this interior. When you're 5'8", 5'9" on a good day, that's kind of annoying. There's also a handle for passengers, but you as the driver, when you climb in, you don't have anything to grab onto, so I kind of end up like either just hooking onto this pillar and feeling like I'm going to rip the trim off, or just jumping in. The other thing that I have to complain about, and then we'll stop complaining, is the white interior. I don't like white interiors because they get dirty. Now, luckily, this is only sort of kind of half white interior, so there's the leather on the dash. There's also some on the door cards that you saw me almost scuff up with my shoe, my dirty shoe. And then there's also some on the headrest here. Now let's move on to some more positive aspects of the interior. There's this nice AEV branding in the headrests. I think that this feels like a solid upgrade over the kind of interior that you get in the Chevy Colorado, which is good because part of this video is about finding out whether this justifies the price increase. And I'm happy to report that the interior does. The Bose sound system, for example, which is an upgrade, is significantly nicer than the baser sound systems in the Colorado. It's also a little bit nicer than the one in the Tacoma. I kind of think the Bowers-Wilkins system in the Ford stuff is the best of the bunch. So if you're a little bit of an audiophile, that might be something worth noting. Let's move on to some other things, like this sunroof, which is a manual, and again, $1,000. I think that that's the price you charge when you don't want to have to put a sunroof on something, but the dealer demographic reports tell you that you do need to put a sunroof on something. Anyways, let's move on to how well this interior functions, right? The door pocket space is a little bit limited. There's a little bit of a cubby down here, and then a spot for a very small water bottle in the door. This water bottle is pretty small, and I actually cannot, I mean, I can, but I would have to like, you know, hit it and bust up the plastic. Thankfully, there's some cup holders here that work just fine. Down here, you'll find there is your four-wheel drive select. There's this little dial which helps you rotate through your various drive modes like normal, sport, off-road, etc. Shifter, duh. I don't love the fact that you have to change gears on this little thummy thing, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the driving impressions. There's also a wireless charger, which is kind of nice if you like to charge your phone wirelessly. And there's some other connectivity. There's two USB ports. One of them is a USB-C, so you can run your Android Auto or CarPlay wired if you would prefer. And then there's the two screens. I like that these are a little bit smaller. The Ranger Raptor has a very large upright screen that is frankly pretty laggy. The Tacoma screen is new and very big. That's kind of a pro-con depending on how I feel the day of. Right now I'm kind of digging the smaller screen. What I don't dig though is the fact that in order to like turn your lights on manually or hit the fog lights or something, you have to go into the touch screen and tell it you want the lights on. They have buried a lot of ancillary controls in the touchscreen, presumably to cut costs, which I don't like. It feels cheap. This is supposed to be a little bit more upmarket, despite sharing a body with the Colorado, and that just feels lazy to me, to be quite honest. However, there are some positives. There's a good amount of configurability in the center screen, so I can see various off-road oriented functions. I can even see like my GPS coordinates, my heading. I can see altitude. I can see pitch, roll. I can see what diffs I have locked and unlocked. It's very good. I have all of the information I feel like I need, and there's some more down here too, which I kind of glossed over when we did this little whole shifter arrangement down here. This is where you go to lock your differentials. So there's your rear locker, and then there's your everything locker. You cannot just lock a front differential or a rear differential, kind of like you can on like the Bronco, for example. There's also some controls to disable your start-stop, which is nice. There's a hard button to disable your lane keep assist. There's an auxiliary button, presumably for towing or lights or something like that. There's only one. Ford gets you like 6 up here on a panel. And then there's my favorite button in the interior. If you would like, you can push this button and it will roll all of the windows down, which is really nice. It's a nice sunny day out. You're feeling good. You want to put on some Steely Dan and rock out and feel the breeze in your hair. All the windows down. Weird thing though, doesn't go back up. Not sure why, but okay. Okay, this is what the back seat is like. It's a mid-sized truck. there's not a lot of room. Surprise, surprise. Now, I'm lucky, right? I'm 5'8", 5'9". I can fit behind myself. If I'm 6 foot, I mean, my knees are going to be like up here on the ceiling, and I'm not going to have a lot of room. So transporting adults frequently, probably not the move. Now, that's also true of like every competitor in this segment. The Raptor, and thus the Ranger, does not have great rear legroom. The Tacoma, frankly, doesn't either. And the Colorado is, well, obviously it's the same thing, so take 3 guesses. Now, this is a little bit nicer back here than some of the other competitors, especially the Colorado, obviously, again, because that's kind of the point. We have the same, little leather touches. We have the same, we don't have branding on the headrest, just kidding. Instead, there's some nice red stitching on here. You do, however, need to keep that down so you can see out the back. There's leather seating, which is, again, nice. It's a little bit less nice back here than it is up front. Up front, you get a little bit more leather. There's a little more to look at. Back here, there's like 2 vents and some USB ports. It's really just for moving people around, and that's okay. I mean, this is a mid-sized truck. That's what it's supposed to do. It does what it says on the box. I don't really have any problems with the space back here. Okay. Let's drive this sucker, shall we? I really hate when I have to do this, but I have to start this segment with an apology. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's a little gloomy, a little overcast today. It turns out the off-road route that I was planning to film on, with all of its big rocks and scary cliffs and, fun off-road things that are cool to watch on camera, it's hailing. And this is not my car. And more importantly, it wouldn't be my insurance claim if this were to be damaged in the hail. And as much as I would love to bring you that footage, I don't have the money for that. So, sorry. We are on the Weenie Hut Junior Trail. It's still a little bit of a challenge, but honestly, I could leave this thing in 2 high and do this. So we're gonna just have to make the best of it. But let's talk about the little bit of off-roading, serious off-roading I did get to do before I had to start running away. And what I do know is that this is a really solid truck off-road. Basically, there's no way a competent off-roader will get this thing stuck, okay? You have rear and front locking differentials, you have all of the clever drive modes, you have hill descent control, you have any tool that you might conceivably need to get unstuck or off of an obstacle. You even have a spotter because of those cool underbody cameras that I was talking about. They're really useful for spotting yourself on obstacles, especially if you're a little worried that you might like kind of high center, or like, hey, if I come off this rock, am I gonna just like drop it straight onto the diff? You don't have to worry about any of that. There were a couple of times where, because this isn't my car and I'm being a little cautious, I got out and I triple checked myself, and then I got back in. You throw the parking brake on and double check. We've all done it, right? Happily, there's really no way to get this thing stuck. It is just as competent as any of the off-roaders. Honestly, any of the off-roaders that we have talked about today, the Tacoma, the Raptor, the Colorado, and this, could do any trail in the state of Colorado, pretty much. There's almost nothing these can't do. Yeah, it might be kind of nice to have a winch. I'm sure you can tell GMC to put one on here or do it yourself. For some of the really sketchy stuff, but the bottom line is that this is all the off-roader anybody needs. Do I feel like the AEV package adds to that? Not really, no. Like, yeah, the bigger tires are kind of nice, and yeah, the extra ground clearance is kind of nice, but you know what? I didn't really miss it, and it's $10,100 to not be able to see out the damn rear view window. It's just not worth it to me, okay? So save yourself the $10,100. Let's talk about a few things with the on-road driving experience. I want to start with the ride quality, because that's always kind of a hit or miss thing with the off-roaders. This has Multimatics DSSV spool valve dampers. They're really good at doing off-road stuff. The compromise, and I believe that I'm kind of in the minority here, is that the ride is not great. I like the way that both the Tacoma and the Raptor ride both on and off road. I just think that they are more comfortable experiences. This, while it definitely gives you clearance, gets the job done, will hold up to the beating that they will take, not as comfortable, especially over high frequency bumps like this over pavement. For whatever reason, this car just does not want to do that, and you get a lot of over stuff. Definitely something to note. Other than that, this is a very quiet experience on road. There's not a lot of noise from the tires, which is shocking given their 35-inch diameter. There's really nothing to complain about. My biggest issue with this car is like some of the cheap out things that they do on the Colorado that I didn't really get to, and I'm gonna address now, because if not now, then when? Like the windows. So this one is powered, or I'm sorry, they're all powered. Don't worry, they're all powered. This one is automatic. The rest, though, are not. That one, the passenger, is automatic down but not up, and it's the same story around the rest of the cabin. Like, frankly, at $60 whatever thousand dollars, or even this car's $50 odd thousand MSRP, I expect automatic windows. Like, this is supposed to be a luxury truck. Come on now. That aside, this is great. The adaptive cruise control is awesome. The seats are pretty comfortable, though I prefer the ones in the Raptor and the Tacoma. They're not gonna like hurt your back, so don't complain. I won't complain, rather. I think that this does a pretty good job on road, and 99% of the time, you're gonna be totally comfortable. So with that in mind, let's get to the end of this thing. Let's wrap this up. I'll go over some final thoughts, and then we'll get out of here. Okay, well, that's it. That is the 2024 GMC Canyon, Colorado. GMC Canyon AT4X AEV edition. That's it. That's the review. Thanks. Bye. Kidding. Let's wrap this up. Here is the deal. I think that you have two choices if you are in the market for a $60-ish thousand plus or minus 10 grand mid-size truck. You either want to A, rock crawl and go overlanding and take the thing camping, pack it full of gear, go hang out by the lake, and be able to get over any obstacles you encounter on the way. That's one path. Or you're me. And by that, I mean, well, A, sorry, you're short and your hairline's starting to go. But other than that, you also have to contend with the fact that you like to go fast. And if you like to go fast, well, there's really only one option in the segment, and that's the Ranger Raptor. If you want to go fast, that's the move. It's got a better transmission. It has paddles so that you can shift gears. It still has all of the various rock crawling necessities like locking differentials and stuff, but the Ranger Raptor is a big rally car, and that's super fun to drive on, say, a flat dirt fire road or a slightly bumpy piece of, back road that's covered in dirt and detritus. It's really fun, or maybe some sand, right? Let's really Baja it. However, if you do want that first option I talked about, this is a really good choice, and I think it's kind of an overlooked one. Everybody is really excited about the new Tacoma, and ooh, it's a hybrid, and ooh, there's all these new trims and the Trailblazer or Trailhunter or whatever. It's so cool, and it's got the big bed rack thingy and off-terrain tires. Yeah, off-terrain tires. That's great. And the Colorado is a cheaper alternative. I think that you could probably skip the AEV stuff. I talked about it a little bit in the drive impressions. Unless you're in the top 5% of off-roaders, you are just not going to need the extra ground clearance, the bigger tires. Remember, you still get all-terrain tires on lower trims. So you get to save yourself around $10,000, which puts you into the low 50s again, and that makes this truck a much more appetizing alternative to the Colorado, I think, because the interior is just that little bit nicer. There's ventilated seats, there's remote start. I think that this is a little bit more worth that $50 odd thousand, and the Colorado, because it starts at such a lower price point, well, I just think that you kind of start to run out of interior at a certain point, and this is just a little bit nicer, and therefore, I think, more worth your time and your money. And to that point, it's also just a little bit nicer inside than your average Tacoma. Draw your own conclusions about the interior experience. I happen to like the Tacoma's interior technology a little bit better, the infotainment, the etc. But I also think that this is still perfectly acceptable and it gets the job done. Now, with that in mind, thank you very much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. AutoGuide really, really appreciates it. And we, as a collective, would also really appreciate it if you remembered to like and to subscribe, because if you do both of those things, we get to keep doing cool stuff. And everybody in the office likes doing cool stuff. So please, it's a very selfish job. Somebody's got to do it. It might as well be us. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.